The story starts in a bustling fair with 14-year-old Wall, an orphan, feeling pretty pleased with what he's managed to collect. Now, he just needs to find a place to crash for the night as he wanders aimlessly. As he heads out from the fair, he bumps into a huge, mysterious guy who makes him uneasy. Wall asks him who he is, but the dude just stays silent. That gut feeling of danger turns out to be spot on because the next thing he knows, he's waking up in total darkness, unable to move. Panic sets in, and he starts to cry, trying to piece together how he ended up in this mess. The only thing he remembers is that strange guy saying he looked useful. Wal realizes that whatever's happening is linked to that encounter, and since he hasn't made any enemies that he knows of, this guy must have some kind of plan. In a moment of desperation, he tries to recall his age, his name, and his parents' names, but all he feels is the weight of darkness bearing down on him, and soon enough, he's crying again. Feeling scared and alone, he worries about starving or losing his mind. He can't shake the thought that this might be part of that guy's plan to let him fade away. As the tears flow, he suddenly feels a tingle in his hand. To his surprise, he can move a bit and breathe easier. The damp air hits him, and he realizes he's underground, hearing water trickling somewhere nearby. With a surge of determination, he fights through the fog of weakness and crawls toward the sound of water. Every ounce of his willpower is focused on survival as he reaches a stone wall with a little stream flowing down. Wal drinks what he can, but in the dark, he accidentally cuts his finger on a rock and feels completely defeated. He collapses to the ground and passes out. The next thing he knows, he's lying there, sensing someone nearby. This guy is really questioning why he is fighting so hard to survive. He wonders what's so amazing about his life that he's struggling so much and suggests maybe he should just give up. If he does give up, he thinks he could finally be at peace and be free from all the suffering. But Wal starts to think, would he really be at peace if he just lets it all go? He doesn't believe so. He decides he's going to fight to stay alive and brushes off that idea. The stranger tells him he's wasting his energy, but Wal knows he won't feel okay if he dies like this. He wants revenge on the person who did this to him for no reason. So when he decides he's going to survive, the guy asks if he really wants revenge, and Wal yells yes. Out of nowhere, the stranger vanishes, and Wal doesn't even realize it's just a hallucination. Deep down, he just needed that little push to keep him going. Wal goes back to the stone wall, feels the moss on it, and tries to eat it without knowing if it's safe. It tastes awful, but he doesn't get sick, so he figures he'll eat more to satisfy his hunger. Now he's determined to do whatever it takes to stay alive. Wal tries to walk around and figures he's in a space that's about 9 square meters. While he's pacing, he hears an iron door creak open. A sharp light almost blinds him, but he heads toward it and sees a shadow of someone leaving food before they quickly shut the door. He can smell the food and immediately rushes to it. Even though he can't see it, he catches a whiff of rotten fish, pork, and tea leaves. Just thinking there are 5 different leftover dishes gives him a hint that there are probably 5 managers running this place. He suspects there might be more people trapped with him too. He doesn't get why he's in this situation, but he can't hold back any longer and digs into the plate of food. He would take these scraps over that gross moss any day. Now that he's finished eating, it's time to come up with a plan. After 4 months, he's been using the time to get stronger. They only bring him food once a day and never say anything. He still hasn't seen any way to escape. At times he thinks he might lose it, but his eyes are starting to adjust to the dark. Now he can make out some shapes, but sometimes he wishes he couldn't. He thinks he's just spotting more bugs when he notices something, but it turns out to be a snake. The snake grabs Wal's arm and starts hissing. The snake bites into his arm, and Wal shrieks in pain as the venom stings his flesh. His whole body feels like it's on fire. The pain is unbearable, but all Wal can do is lie on the ground and suffer the poison running into his blood. Wal's meal shows up, and he grabs the bowl, hoping some food will help him recover. He's determined not to let himself go down, no matter what. After a while, he finds himself face to face with the snake again. He feels different, like his body has changed during the whole detox thing. Everything seems clearer now. Wal reaches out to the hissing snake, thinking that maybe getting bitten before actually made him tougher. He's heard stories about this kind of thing. He's hoping he can shake off the snake's venom and maybe even score a weapon. His arm feels like it's on fire and gets all swollen and red. He starts to doubt whether this is a good idea, but the pain isn't as intense as it was the first time. He looks right at the snake, and even though its eyes are bright, it's a really good hunter. It relies on being sneaky and sometimes even uses sound to catch its dinner. But snakes are not greedy, as once they eat their meal, they don't scare off their prey. The ground starts shaking out of nowhere, and Wal is freaked out by what's happening. He notices that a door has opened and sees more rooms down the hall that are pretty far away, which explains why he's never heard anything from them before. He peeks into one of the rooms and gets a big whiff of rotting flesh. He checks out the body and figures the person is probably about his age. He also wonders if it's the same deal in the other rooms. He walks down the hall and looks at the door again. The handles and bolts are gone, but he can still open the door. On the other side of the door, he sees a boy and a girl who seem estranged. He strolls past them and checks out the extra rooms without saying anything. He spots more bodies, and the girl finally asks who he is since she can't see him in the dark. He introduces himself and mentions he's stuck in the nearby sector. He asks for their names, and she tells him she's Yewol and the guy is Song. Wal doesn't care about anything else and tells them to follow him. He figures there are probably more spots like this and runs through another door. They decide to tag along, and on the other side, they find another group of people. Everyone is stunned to see each other, but Wal notices there are fewer folks who starved to death in this area and figures they chose to end it instead. He also sees more bowls of food and wonders why there's a difference between the sectors. Yo tells him this group got trapped around the same time as they did. They keep moving and come across another underground space with a door. Wal opens it, and they're hit with bright light. At first, they think they're about to go outside, but then they realize it's just a torch blinding them. Once their eyes adjust, they can't believe what they see. It's like an underground village. They walk through the makeshift structures, but there's no one around. Wal guesses it must have been put together quickly since everything looks flimsy. While he's trying to figure it all out, one of the girls calls out to him. Her name is Li Min. Min gets closer to Wal and asks if his eyes always look like that. She tells him that his pupils are red, and he figures it's from the snakebite. She thinks it's from the torch that helps him out. Min wants to know what's on his mind and tells Wal he's different from the rest. Wal asks how, and she responds that everyone else is confused. But he seems to actually be thinking clearly. Yo jumps in and asks what they're up to. Min says they're just chatting, and Yo mentions that the others have decided to form a group. Yo asks if Wal wants to join them, but Wal isn't sure about that. They get a bit offended, but Wal insists it's not the right time for him to team up. Min has to accept Wal's choice. Meanwhile, she's really keen to join the group, but Wal knows they've been isolated for way too long. Their heads aren't in the right place, so Wal decides to step back and just watch from a distance. After a bit, Wal spots that a bunch of cliques have formed, with Yo and Song as leading members. Kong has his own crew, Jung has gathered some people, and Yongsan is running another group. Then there's Wal, the odd one out who doesn't really fit in anywhere. They think he might have wiped out everyone else in his area, which is why he's keeping to himself. Wal doesn't care about them and walks over to one of the walls. He figures this underground place can't be that old, but the moss on the walls suggests it's been around for a while and just refurbished. It's gotta be the work of someone super rich. Out of nowhere, a hole opens up in the ceiling, and a basket starts lowering. When it hits the ground, it's packed with food. Some people are about to dive in, but Yo stops them. She suggests they should share the food fairly so that everyone representing their groups can step forward to help. Then Wal chimes in, saying he wants his share before anybody says anything else. Wal grabs his food, but Jung stops him, telling him he can't take anything from the basket without asking first. He has no idea what a huge blunder he just made. Wal pulls his hand back and soaks Jung's eyeballs. Blood spills out of his eyes and everyone is in shock as Wal slams Jung to the ground. Wal dares Jung to say something again, but all Jung can do is scream in pain. Wal is not letting up and presses his fingers in deeper. The others were already afraid of him, and now they are even more scared. Yo steps in and asks Wal nicely to let go. At first he refuses, but when Yo promises that no one will touch his share of food, he finally lets go. He stares at Jung one last time, then grabs his food and walks away. As he eats, Wal keeps watching from a distance. He is convinced they are being tested, and only the useful ones will make it. If this continues, most of the group will eventually turn against them. Yo comes over and asks how he has been. Wal knows he does not have any friends here, but he tells her he has been watching. He has noticed how important she is to the others. She eats the least after making sure her group gets the most food. Among the other leaders, she stands out the most. She asks if he is still sleeping alone in that dark room. He is. He has been using it to build up his tolerance for venom. By now, snake bites do not even hurt him anymore. As they talk, the ceiling opens and their meal drops in. This time, it is barely anything. Yo is shocked, but Wal was expecting it. He knew this was coming. It begins, he thinks to himself. Mak no-sam is just a kid who makes it through the final sector. He is the smallest in Yo's crew, but his determination keeps him going. Unfortunately, he does not survive. His death hits Yo's crew hard. Everyone feels the loss, but deep down they wonder if he did not make it because he was the weakest. Yo and Song are set on revenge. They have a plan, and Wal knows exactly what it is. Their next target will be the weakest link from another group. After Mak from Yo's crew disappears, everything starts falling apart. More people die each night. First, it is someone from Yo's crew, then Young's, then Yongsan's, and finally Kong's. Nobody trusts anyone anymore, and paranoia spreads fast. Wal, on the other hand, is not too concerned. He has his secret stash of moss. The taste is strange, but he is willing to put up with it. Wal mostly keeps to himself in his dark room, but that is about to change. He hears voices in the hallway and counts at least 4 people. They are not just wandering around. Jung and his crew are coming for him. Wall quickly slips into the shadows. Jung is ready for revenge. He has already taken down 2 people since the last fight and is fired up. As they walk, one of his guys suddenly collapses as a sharp pain shoots through his leg. A snake has already slithered away. He does not last long. The venom takes him out fast. Jung panics and starts yelling for Wall. Meanwhile, Wall sneaks up on another one of his guys and puts him in a chokehold. Jung shouts at him to let go, but Wall hesitates for only a second before snapping the guy's neck. Now, it is just Jung. He charges at Wall, swinging wildly, but every punch misses. Wall moves too fast. Before Jung can react, Wall slips behind him and tells him he will not stop at just one eye this time. Jung stumbles back and quickly changes his approach. He tries to negotiate and offers to team up. Wall is thrown off for a second. Jung really thinks he cannot survive without him. When he sees Wall is not interested, he switches tactics again and says he will be his minion instead. Wall steps in closer and shakes his head. There is no way he can trust him. Jung makes one last attempt to defend himself, but Wall is not having it. He crouches down, lands a brutal uppercut, and locks him in a chokehold until he passes out. Looking down at Jung's unconscious body, Wall mutters that he takes his life because in the end he is still too weak. After Wall takes down Jung, everything falls apart. Everyone knows it's him and starts wondering just how strong he really is. The other leaders want nothing to do with him. He is too smart and too ruthless. San can't help but notice how Wall can strike fear into people. San sits with his crew, talking about how bad things have gotten. The food situation is a disaster. People are killing just to survive. Everyone has blood on their hands now. They all know Wall is the one who took out Jung, and none of them want to get in his way. San tells his crew to stay far away from Wall. A person with nothing left to lose is the most dangerous kind. His crew understands exactly what he means. Then one of their guys runs in with some wild news. 2 kids from Yo's crew have been kicked out and are holding onto a potato. He tells them they have to move fast before the kids eat it. San can't believe they are really about to fight over a potato, but he still tells everyone to get ready. They head to the red house and spot the kids. The crew is itching to take the potato. San gives the signal, and the kids try to run, but something feels off. This is bad. They are at a disadvantage. One of the kids whistles, and suddenly, Yo's group swarms in. San shouts for his team to fall back, but they are surrounded. More attackers close in from behind. Yo and Song step forward, looking pleased with themselves. San knows exactly what they are thinking. Fewer people mean fewer mouths to feed. He is furious at how easily he has fallen into their trap, but he knows he can't take them all alone. He pleads with Yo to let him live. Yo wishes she could, but there just isn't enough food to go around. San starts to panic. Yo tells him he would have made the same choice if he were in her position. She turns her back and tells her crew to finish him off. San isn't going down that easily. He dodges and fights back, taking down anyone who gets too close. As Yo walks away, she notices Wall standing at a distance watching everything. He is picked up on her tricks. He is learning how to use the land to his advantage, setting up shortcuts and making sure defenses are tight enough to keep others out. Wall starts thinking about whether the kidnappers have set this place up to be just like the one they took the kids from. Maybe they are trying to make them used to this way of life. If there is a place like this, then it probably belongs to someone important. Attacking without a plan would be suicide. Wall realizes now why they are being used. They are just tools. They will be thrown away when their purpose is done. They have been tossed into hell, stripped of their humanity. They aren't just fighting to live. They are being trained to kill. After taking out San and his crew, Yo's group is fired up. They celebrate like crazy, glad to be on her side. Yo joins in, feeling on top of the world. She is sure no one will dare mess with them now. Min stands there, shaken. Everyone around her acts like murder is nothing. She does not understand how they can laugh and cheer with blood on their hands. Tears fall as she talks about the kids they kill. Her words hit hard. Out of nowhere, the ceiling opens. Everyone freezes because the delivery is earlier than expected. Yo shouts for her crew to grab as much food as possible. She is excited, thinking they finally have enough to eat. Then she spots Wall standing still. He does not look excited like the others. Something feels off. Yo glances back and finally understands. Instead of a food basket, masked men drop down from the hole. At first, no one knows what is happening. Then the masked guys start swinging. Fists and kicks land everywhere. While others get beaten, Wall stays low and tries to hide. He expects this to happen sooner or later. He does not want to draw attention. Then he notices 3 men standing in front of him. Their clothes are very nice. These are the real ones calling the shots. One of them raises his hand, and the masked fighters stop. The man introduces himself as First Sword. He tells the kids their lives belong to him now. There is no escape. One of Yo's people speaks up. His head is gone in an instant. Blood sprays everywhere. The kids stare in shock. First Sword makes it clear. Speak without permission, and you will regret it. Wall watches in silence, knowing everything is about to change. Later that night, the real ones meet in secret. They talk about curse poison. If you throw a bunch of poisonous creatures into a jar, they fight until only one is left. The strongest poison belongs to the last survivor. That is what they are looking for. They want to see which kid has the deadliest poison. First, Sword asks who they should keep an eye on. Second Sword does not hesitate. Yo is the one to watch. She has the biggest crew and knows how to get people to follow her. If they do not break her now, she becomes a bigger threat later. First, Sword decides Yo needs special treatment. He will not let her even think about rebellion. Second Sword brings up Song and Kang. They are skilled fighters and worth watching. Then First Sword asks about Wall. He is the only survivor from Sector 1. Second Sword confirms Wall is still alive. First Sword is impressed. Sector 1 has the worst conditions and barely any food. Anyone who survives that is dangerous. He orders them to keep a close eye on Wall, too. As the meeting ends, First Sword thinks about their deadline. The Blood Phantom Group captain takes a 7-year assassination job. The reward is 500,000 yangs. The only rule is simple. No one can trace it back to them. One of the masked guys announces the next challenge. The first person to reach the flag at the top of the house gets a 2-hour break. The last one to make it will face real hell. Just like that, the race begins. The trainees keep pushing through brutal training every single day. They have no choice if they want to see the outside world again. Yo moves fast and easily wins the race. The real ones watch from a distance and talk about the challenge. They see that Yo is sharp and fearless. The First Sword starts wondering about Wall. The Second Sword does not think much of him since he has done nothing special. This surprises the First Sword because Wall is the only one left from Sector 1. He still wants to keep an eye on him. Later, Yo sees Wall studying the thunder-splitting cultivation technique. The instructor stopped making them practice it, but Wall said he felt like repeating it. Yo thinks it is a waste of time and heads to bed. Wall remembers what the experienced trainees told him. The technique is supposed to be easy for a beginner like him, but they still give him 3 months to master it. Once he learns the first step, his body will transform, and he can sense chi and build internal energy. He thinks the others do not really understand the technique. Since thunder cannot be physically split, it might be more about thinking speed. If he approaches it that way, he might learn something different. He knows he cannot show off, though. Being too impressive or too clueless would be a bad idea. Everything seems fine until Wall dodges a knife flying at his throat, so Gyeok-san threw it. Wall cannot believe another trainee would actually try to kill him. He asks San why he did it, but San just shrugs and says he wants real combat experience instead of fake training. Wall accepts the fight since the instructors do not seem to care even though they trained them with swords. He pulls out his blade. San rushes at him, warning that if he does not act fast, he is finished. San has no idea how much Wall has improved. Wall dodges every attack with ease. San keeps attacking with everything he has. Wall cannot believe they are using blades this aggressively, but he is ready. He is trained too hard to lose here. Out of nowhere, San lunges with his knife. Wall easily shoves him aside. San refuses to give up and attacks again from every direction. None of his strikes land. Frustration shows on his face. He can tell Wall is a serious fighter. San refuses to back down. He yells at Wall to stop dodging and really fight. Wall is tired of holding back, so he finally strikes. The instructor watches closely as Wall starts fighting back. San pushes harder, hoping to see Wall go all out. Wall has no choice now. He drops his knife and lands a solid kick straight to San's chest. While they fight, the First Sword and Second Sword discuss the trainees. The Second Sword thinks they will be ready in 5 years instead of 7. The First Sword disagrees. He thinks they underestimate their opponent, Sichuan, who is the strongest fighter. The First Sword insists on pushing the trainees even harder. If they are not strong enough, they will be wiped out. Their real target is too powerful, which is why they are sacrificing these kids in the first place. He suggests forcing the trainees to learn deadly assassination techniques, even if most of them do not survive the training. Wall completely dominates the fight. He snaps San's arm and the guy collapses crying. Everyone watches in silence, waiting to see what Wall will do next. He just stands there without moving. One of the masked guys walks up to Wall and asks if he is the one who did it. Wall says, yeah, and a sword is at his neck before he knows it. He does not even see it coming. The guy moves so fast that it blows him away. Wall starts freaking out, thinking he might have messed up. He knows he cannot fight back because, to these masked guys, he is just a pawn. They would not hesitate to hurt him. The masked guy pulls his sword back and tells Wall that an assassin should never leave behind evidence. Breaking an arm like that makes it too easy to identify him. He tells Wall to remember that next time. Wall lets out a breath of relief as the masked man walks away. 6 years later, one of the masked guys walks through a village searching for the trainees who are supposed to be hiding from him. He spots one immediately and tells him he would be dead if this were real. Then he keeps searching. He knows that inexperienced assassins cannot fully master the turtle breathing technique. No matter how much they think they can hide, it is still obvious. He quickly picks up on another presence and marks another failed test. He keeps moving, looking for the last person in this area. He scans the surroundings but sees no one. He starts wondering if someone made a mistake and counted an extra person in the test. He calls out to see if anyone is still there, and to his shock, Wall is standing right next to him. He has been hiding in plain sight the whole time. Wall nails the test and asks for a break. The trainer allows it but still cannot believe what just happened. Wall heads back to the house and runs into San and the others. San gets excited and asks what he has been up to. Wall rolls his eyes at the goofy faces San keeps making and jokes that he is going to forget what his real face even looks like. San just shrugs and says it does not matter since they are stuck here anyway. Yo jumps in and mentions that the food has been getting better. She thinks they might be close to completing their mission. The story moves on, and we find the first sword just hanging out, totally worn out and without his mask. He's been reflecting on how much the cave has changed over the last 6 years. They've trained 30 out of 300 people to become assassins, and he can't shake the feeling that any one of them could take him out with their skills at any moment. He's feeling pretty emotional, thinking his time might be running out. Then, the second and third sword stroll in and ask him why he's got his mask off. He tells them it's been super tight after all this time, and then suggests they can ditch their masks too. So they all sit together at the table, celebrating as their time in the cave is about to end. With just one last mission to send the trainees off for their kill, freedom is finally within sight. The first sword checks in on how the trainees are doing, and the second sword says they've really impressed him, with some even better than the instructors. He thinks it's a shame to just toss them aside after one use, but the first sword insists it's how the mission is set up. He's ready to start the final stage and puts 3 journals on the table. They call in the trainees and explain what's going down. 3 of them will learn a martial arts technique, and the other 27 will have to take out the ones who've mastered it. But everyone in the group is feeling the tension as they grumble about how unfair it is to fight each other again. The masked guys reassure them that this is the last training session, and after this, they won't have to go through it anymore before they leave. The crew starts doubting if this is for real. Yo suspects it might just be as easy as letting the 3 choose freedom, while Wall thinks about what their next step should be. If you go for that martial art, just know you'll be a target, and the techniques you'll learn are probably way more advanced than what you know now. Wall jumps in and volunteers first, clearly eager. Yo can't believe it and asks if he really wants to be the target. Wall replies that time will show if he ends up being the scapegoat or the one who figured it all out. A girl warns him to be careful since he's now everyone's main target. As time goes by, the second person who wanted to learn martial arts goes down. After Wall chose to take the challenge, no one else stepped up, so they ended up drawing lots. Song feels bad about what just happened, but he's got no other choice. Wall is the last of the 3 trying to sort things out. Song gets back to the group, and Min asks about Wall. It's been a while since they saw him in AM, and they're curious if he managed to get away. Yo's feeling uneasy and mentions that the last time she saw Wall was a few days ago during training. They had a pretty intense session, and Yo thought she had a good sense of how tough their final opponent would be. San thinks it might be easier to just get rid of the instructors instead of dealing with Wall. Song is totally on board with that, but it feels like the real deal probably put some kind of limits on them. Yo chimes in, saying they can figure out the restrictions later and should really focus on finding Wall first. They finally bail on the cave, and Wall's been watching the whole time. He's kind of surprised they were even thinking about going after the instructors instead of him. Wall realizes the instructors might be after the others, and there's no way they didn't overhear that chat. He thinks this could be his shot to figure out what's really going on. Wall heads over to the real one's base. There are guards everywhere, but he is not too worried. He is confident he can handle it. He figures that if he combines the turtle breathing technique with the thunder splitting technique, he can slip past them without anyone noticing. Sure enough, he strolls right past the guards without a problem. He makes his way to the deepest part of the base because he is sure that whatever he is looking for is in this room. Wall pushes the door open and steps inside. He scans the place for clues. He needs to find out why they're being pushed so hard to become assassins and, more importantly, who is pulling the strings. As he searches, he spots a golden tube. He is curious, so he opens it and pulls out a scroll. It contains their mission. They must take out Wu Gunsung in 7 years for a reward of 5,000,000 yang. He just can't wrap his head around it and is really curious about how incredible Wu Gun must be in training assassins for 7 years. It's mind-boggling to think that taking out 270 people is worth just one guy's life. Suddenly, Wall hears footsteps and knows he has to get out of there quickly. The first sword rushes down the hallway and instantly figures out someone has been in the room when he kicks the door open. Wall tried to clean up, but it's still a total mess. The second and third sword come into the base and bump into the first sword. He's in a panic because there's an intruder, and they need to figure out who it is before the person slips away. They start tossing around ideas about who could have pulled it off, but then realize that no one is as skilled as Wall. Meanwhile, Wall's right above them, hiding out and listening. They're totally taken aback that Wall had the guts to sneak into their base while everyone wanted to take him down. They throw around ideas about punishing him, but they're worried it could stir up some serious drama. The first sword thinks there's no other option but to bring out its flute. The second sword is stunned, saying it's only supposed to be a last resort, but the senior's convinced it's better to use it now to teach the kids a lesson and show them who's running the show. The first sword checks in to make sure everyone's on board, and both the second and third sword give a thumbs up. A little later, the first sword standing right at the cliff's edge. Meanwhile, the trainees have no clue what's about to go down as they keep searching for Wall. No one can seem to track him, not even the best hunters. Suddenly, they hear a weird sound coming from an instrument. The noise slams into them hard, and they all hit the ground yelling in pain. Min screams for help, feeling like the sound is wrecking her. Lying on the ground and crying, the others are feeling like their bodies are on fire when Wall shows up. He doesn't feel any pain himself and realizes they've triggered the restriction. All looks around and sees everyone else in pain, wondering why he's the only one feeling fine. He is curious about what's going on, so he decides to try some internal energy infusion on Min. It's a bit risky, but it should work since Min is also trained in the thunder-splitting cultivation technique. After checking out Min, All realizes her internal energy is perfectly fine, with no issues. He keeps digging for any differences between them. They eat the same food, live in the same place, and practice the same martial arts. Then it clicks that maybe the difference is because of poison. It all seems to be about poison, which also explains why Wall isn't feeling any pain. He's built up a resistance to poison from getting bitten by that snake multiple times. All is still puzzled about how they managed to mess up 27 people at once. He figures they probably mixed some cursed poison into the food and are triggering it somehow with sound. When he hears them shout for him, he needs to think quickly. Instead of running off and giving away his resistance, Wall drops to the ground and pretends to be in pain. Soon enough, Wall is found lying there and someone calls for the first sword. He pulls out his sword and swings it down toward Wall, demanding to know why he was in his room. He also mentions how good Wall has been at hiding his true abilities. The first sword pulls out his blade and says it would be easier to deal with the annoyance immediately. But the second sword jumps in, telling him to chill for a bit. He explains they need Wall to finish the job since he's the one who stands out the most among the trainees. The first sword gets a bit irritated and insists that the other trainees are good enough. But deep down, they both know that's not really the case. The second sword throws out the idea of using the flute to control Wall, since he's helpless against the cursed poison. The first sword likes that plan and tells the masked guys to get everyone hooked up with the antidote. After everyone feels better from the antidote, they are still confused about what just happened. The first sword jumps in again, reminding them that all that pain came from Wall. If he hadn't snuck into their base, they would not have gone through all that. He warns them that they should remember how much hurt they just experienced if anyone messes up like that again. Later, Wall reflects on everything that went down. He realizes that the real ones thought he was totally unable to handle the poison. But he's feeling pretty good about the snake venom knocked out the cursed poison and helped him get around the restrictions. Wall hears footsteps in the hall again. Min and the others are on the hunt for him, and Yo can't believe he'd actually want to chill and dump like this just to train. She figures he's stuck hiding out since everyone else threw him under the bus. San is getting antsy and yells for Wall. Out of nowhere, Wall shows up and asks why they're after him. Everyone is freaked out because of him, and he asks again. Yo brings up the restriction, saying she wasn't there when everyone passed out but showed up right after they woke up. She figures it barely hit Wall at all. Then Min starts thinking about her tough times and realizes she made it because someone lent her their strength. She can't help but wonder if it was Wall. Wall finally comes clean and admits he knows what's going on. He lets them know he's fully aware of the limits they put on him. Yo keeps pushing for more info, but Wall is hesitant, wondering why he should help and what's in it for him, and gets upset and says that's not how you treat friends. Wall jokes that real buddies would, not attack each other with so much anger. San understands where Wall's coming from and promises to treat him like a buddy. It's clear he's not fully convincing, and Wall thinks he has to do more to earn San's trust. San compliments Wall on his cool silk mask. San suggests it'd be awesome to have someone like him around. He invites Wall to join the floral performance group if they ever get free and offers to help out. Yo says if Wall pitches in, she'll consider him a friend and promises her group won't treat him badly. Feeling a bit left out, Min jumps in that she would never turn her back on Wall. Feeling fed up with all the lies, Wall finally blurts out that the restriction is actually cursed poison. When they ask for more details, he explains that they've been poisoned by some nasty organism that usually just hang out in their bodies. The issue is that it reacts to the hell flute, which releases the poison, spreading it through their blood and messing with their organs. Yo asks how Wall handles the poison. He explains he's usually pretty resistant to it, so it doesn't hit him hard. He says he's shared all the info they need, and they should be able to figure out how to get rid of the cursed poison on their own. Wall isn't really into sharing the whole truth since that could make things messy. Yo thanks him for the info and says he can hit her up if he ever needs anything. Wall says he might take her up on that offer sometime, and then they both go their separate ways. Min stops Wall and tells him her real name is Lee Solman. Wall's a bit puzzled about why it even matters, but she just wants him to remember it. The first sword tells everyone they are finally getting out of the cave today, and the trainees are super pumped but still a little skeptical. He singles out Yeo and puts her in charge of leading the way. She grabs her stuff, and a basket is lowered from the ceiling. As the real masters make their way out, they can't help but wonder how many of their trainees will actually make it. They trained hard, but now they are up against a seriously talented martial artist, probably the best in the Jianghu. The first sword feels a wave of relief knowing he's done his job and can finally kick back and enjoy retirement. The trainees are stoked, since this is the day they've been looking forward to for ages. Yo jumps in and starts sorting out their escape plan. Wal is relieved, but can't shake this nagging feeling that everything seems too good to be true. Yo walks over to Wal and asks if he's ready for their mission. Wal says he is and brings up that cursed poison situation. Yo reassures him they were detoxed because Min was pretty savvy with that stuff. Most others are out by now, so Yo tells Wal it's their turn to go. The basket drops one last time and they hop on. As it rises, Wal glances down at the place he's called home. For the previous 7 years, as it's been so deep underground that it was like hell. Wal thinks about ripping off his arm sleeve as they near the exit. They must shield their eyes since they haven't seen sunlight in ages. The others catch on and do the same. The light gets brighter as the basket climbs, but they finally break free. Just as they're trying to peek outside, a guy walks up to the basket and proudly says they must have trained some good ones. Wal's eyes are still adjusting, and the guy mentions that the person who ordered them will be pleased with their assassins. Even though he can't see him, Wal thinks the guy's voice sounds cold and emotionless. Wal gets the vibe that this guy is high up the ranks just from how he talks. He figures he must be the captain of the Blood Phantom group, and he's right because this is Gu Yang, the captain. Gu tells everyone to get ready to head over to Clearwind Manor. Wal takes a quick glance back at Gu as they're led to the carriage. That guy's voice is stuck in his head. Once they reach the manor, Gu tells the trainees this is where they'll start getting used to the outside world. He warns them to stay sharp because he'll handle any mess-ups if they don't. Wal ends up sharing a dorm with Shinnok and San. He lets his new roommates know he's heading to the well for a wash. After a nice soak, he feels totally refreshed and decides to chill on the grass, soaking in the beautiful scenery. He even ends up crashing out there for the night and wakes up to an awesome day. The other trainees are buzzing over a flower that's totally new to them. They can't believe how amazing it is to see something like that again. Just as they're celebrating, the captain shows up out of nowhere and puts a damper on the fun. Gu drops some weapons in front of them and tells them they'll be getting those soon. He makes it clear they need to keep them safe because they'll be using them before long. After a bit, Gu tracks down the first sword at the palace to give a shout out to his uncle for everything he's done. The first sword says he's just doing his job. Gu brings up how the Blood Phantom group thrives because of his uncle's hard work and wonders how to show his thanks. The first sword says there's no need for that. He might not be alive if it weren't for the last leader. Gu suggests that his uncle should consider retiring, and he feels the same about the second and third sword. Those words are music to the first sword's ears after waiting 7 years to hear them. He then opens up to Gu, saying the trainees are too talented to just be used once. Gu agrees but insists they have no choice. The connection with the trainees has to end here. The first sword asks if Gu knows who asked for the mission. Gu admits he doesn't know, but for 500,000 yang, he's not about to question anyone willing to pay that. Gu sees the Blood Phantom group as the next big thing in the assassin scene. If they pull this off, they'll outshine the White Spirit group. Later, Wal gets prepped for his mission with San and other assassins. San asks if he's feeling nervous, and Wal admits he's on edge. But San, knowing him well, can tell when Wal's not being honest. Wal thinks San is acting anxious because he won't stop talking. San, as usual, gets defensive and says he wants to settle the score for everything he's been through in the last 7 years. The assassins gear up and just get word that they'll be heading out to a new spot which Wal has been looking forward to. They sneak out into the night following the fourth sword. The new recruits keep up and he's seriously impressed. It's a shame to think how much their skills would be wasted if tossed aside. They finally get to their location, and the fourth sword tells everyone to stay low for a bit. The group hides out as he starts talking about their mission. He mentions that once they get up the mountain, they'll find a manor that looks just like the old underground one they used to live in. The guy thereafter is inside the Bright Moon Palace, among the buildings. The assassins are itching to get started since they know the place like the back of their hands. Wall is the only crew member who realizes their target is Wu-gun. We then cut to a woman named Yang, who is lost in her thoughts while checking out some flowers. One flower catches her eye, and it suddenly disappears when she reaches out to touch it. Yang still tries to process everything when she hears someone call her name. It's Seol, the leader of the Ime sect. Ran asks why she's out here all alone. Yang just shrugs and says she's enjoying the nice breeze. Ran then asks if Yang is still holding a grudge. Yang replies that it's complicated, but she knows her life is on the line with this request, and honestly, she'd rather not be involved at all. Ran is really annoyed and doesn't appreciate Yang's attitude. She reminds her that Yang helped her when she was just another nobody on the streets. Ran clarifies that Yang shouldn't think she can just back out after everything Ran has done for her. Feeling bad, Yang doesn't want Ran to be upset because it's not good for her health. Ran mentions that if they don't hear back today, they'll stick to their original plan. Yang is on board and always ready to follow her master. Just as the discussion wraps up, a messenger rushes in with some thrilling news. They tell Ran that the proposal gets approved. This is amazing for the sect, and Ran tells Yang that their sect's future now relies on how well she performs. Yang reassures her not to worry at all. Ran can't help but feel down that she has to use someone as talented as Yang as a political pawn instead of having her as a successor. The messenger asks Ran what they should do about the other issue. Ran wonders if they're talking about the goal for 500,000 Yang. Only time will tell what she's got in mind for the Blood Phantom group. Meanwhile, Wal wakes up, wondering if it's still morning. He knows the mission isn't set for tonight, so there's plenty of time. He tries to fall back asleep, but something feels off. Suddenly, a spear strikes one of the other assassins. Wal is completely shocked as he realizes they're under attack. The story keeps rolling, and we find this monk named Yu Jin slamming his spear into the ground, trying to figure out if something's off. He pulls the spear out and accidentally stabs a trained assassin who is hiding underground. Jin's suspicions are right because assassins are hiding in the mountains. He quickly alerts his crew that the Qingcheng sect is under attack and tells them to track down and remove the intruders. Wal realizes he and the others are in a tough situation. They all agree that their best bet to stay safe is to get out of there. The monks start poking around the ground, hoping to catch an assassin by surprise. One of the monks gets a bit too close, and suddenly the assassins spring into action. They think about scattering and regrouping once they break free from the monk's trap, but the monks aren't letting them off that easy and start chasing them down. Jin throws his spear at one assassin and takes him down. He quickly asks for another spear and gets another one just after that. Grabbing yet another spear, he takes down another assassin. Seriously, this is turning out to be a walk in the park for Jin. Wu's crew is getting wiped out one by one, and soon he's the last assassin. Jin makes a desperate throw, and it's heading straight for Wal. But Wal catches the spear midair and whips it back with crazy speed. The spear zips past the monks and heads right toward Jin. While the monks turn to see the spear flying by, Wal seizes his chance to go after the nearest group of monks. The spear is hurtling toward Jin so fast that it just barely grazes his ear. This ticks Jin off, and he orders his men to hunt Wal down until he's gone for good. Outnumbered and alone, Wal figures it's best to run for it. An injured assassin lies on the ground, pleading for his life as Jin walks up to him. He begs for mercy, but Jin takes his life instead. He points out the dumb mistake he made by trying to attack the Qingcheng sect. Wal runs for his life while figuring out how the monks found their hiding spot. He suspects someone might have spilt the beans, but he is the only one who knows their target. It could have been the Fourth Sword or one of his guys. They bailed before the ambush even happened. They only let them go after to cover up who took out Wu-gun. The monks finally catch up to Wal and hit him with 2 arrows. He goes down but struggles to get back up. He did not spend 6 years underground just to go out like this. He starts wondering if there was some drama within the Blood Phantom group, or if the person who asked for him just changed their mind. The only thing Wal knows for sure is that the Blood Phantom group has ditched him. He reaches the end of the path and needs to hide, but he is leaving a bloody trail behind. One of the monks tries to track him down, but before he can, Wal drops down from a tree and takes him out. Now he is completely on his own with many monks chasing him. With no other options left, he dives into the river. After making it out, he spots a message on a rock, telling him to head 400 meters north. He keeps moving and finds another message with a shorter distance. Wal is getting closer to the spot. Seeing all the blood on the rocks, he figures the person who wrote the code must be hurt pretty badly. But in the distance, he hears people searching for him. He starts to wonder if these messages are some kind of trap. Based on all the different uniforms he sees, at least 7 different clans are involved. Out of nowhere, he senses danger and drops to the ground just in time to dodge an attack. Lying there, he glances up and spots Min. She does not even realize she is going after Wall. Min is really happy to see Wall, but she is badly hurt and suddenly collapses. Wall tries to catch her, but he misses. Seeing how much blood she is losing, he starts to worry that she might not make it. He asks where everyone else is. Min tells him that most of them are gone. Wall wants to know about Yo and Song, but Min says she has no idea. They all split up and went their own ways. She remembers how they stepped up and told everyone to run while they stayed behind to fight. They were true leaders right until the end. Wall gets emotional, watching his friends lose their lives. He lays Min down and tells her she has little time left. He asks if she is scared to die and if she wants to live. Min says she wants to live and asks if Wall can help her. He tells her he cannot. Min says that is why she is ready to give up. She knows her body is in bad shape. She is just glad she will not have to go through this alone. She asks Wall if he will stay with her until the end. Holding back his tears, he promises he will. Min cannot believe this is how it all ends after everything they have been through just to survive. She wants to know who did this to them and why anyone would be so cruel. She hopes whoever is behind this can feel her pain. Wall tells her it was all about Wugun. She looks at him and asks what he means. He explains that their target was Wugun from the Qing sect. Someone hired the Blood Phantom group to take him out, and they were kidnapped and trained as assassins. Now that they are no longer needed, they are being wiped out. Wall tells Min he will find out who did this to them no matter what. He is determined to track them down and get revenge, even if it kills him. Min is struggling to stay conscious. She tells Wall she wants him to stay with her. As she begins to fade, she asks him to say her full name. He does, and she thanks him. All she wanted was to hear Wall call her name one last time. As her spirit leaves, he promises to destroy whoever is responsible. Back at the palace, Gu is reading a message. The fourth sword tells him the assassins are trapped and will not escape. As Gu reads, he thinks it is a shame to throw them away after everything they have been through. But their mission has been cancelled, so they are no longer helpful. The fourth sword wonders if that means the palace could be in danger. Gu assures him that they will not be able to find this place. He thinks it is best to wait until things settle down. Then, the fourth sword asks if Gu really does not know who sent the request. Gu says he has a good idea, but there are boundaries he has to respect. Gu is not worried since they sent a message, which was fine. But when the fourth sword takes a closer look, he suddenly panics. There was tracking incense mixed in. Before they can react, one of their own is taken out. The palace is under attack. The first sword warns the intruders to back off because they are outmatched. But they refuse. One of them yells for them to take down all the assassins and break the commandment. The fourth sword tells Gu they need to retreat. Gu refuses. He says he cannot leave because the attackers are here for him and will never let him escape. He is furious that they went this far and gets ready to fight. He charges forward, cutting down enemies without hesitation. He warns them that if they bite, they will be devoured. Gu tells his men to hold on a little longer, but then he hears someone in the distance. A voice tells him he is not getting that chance. Out of nowhere, an insanely powerful attack lands. The opponent tries to block it with a heavy sword strike, but it is too much. He stumbles back, coughing up blood. The force shakes him to his core. He demands to know who this person is. A woman scoffs at him. She is offended that a lowly assassin would dare ask for her name. As she steps closer, Gu suddenly realizes who she is. Zhonghua, the life-ending toxic heart. Just as Gu is about to ask if she was the one who made the request, she cuts him off. She warns him to keep his mouth shut unless he wants her to rip out his tongue. She prepares to strike again. Gu finally puts it all together. The person behind this is from the Ame sect. He regrets not digging deeper when he had the chance. His mistake has become a disaster, but he is not planning to go down alone. Zhonghua is tired of Gu's confidence and launches another attack. Gu manages to block it and fights back. Finally, they broke apart, both standing their ground, ready to jump back in at any second. Zhonghua is impressed by Gu's skill. She's glad they're fighting in broad daylight and has no chance to pull off some sneaky ambush in the cover of darkness. But she knows this has to end. With that, she unleashes a final whirlwind strike. This time, Gu can't block it. Gu knows he's staring death in the face and can't help but worry this might be the end for the Blood Phantom group. But then he thinks about all the blood, sweat, and tears he poured into building the group to stand toe-to-toe with the White Spirit group. That thought lights a fire in him, giving him the strength to keep fighting. Gu and Zhonghua are really going at it, throwing some serious punches. Just when the fight is about to escalate, someone jumps in and takes a hit meant for Gu. The whole vibe shifts in an instant, and everyone just freezes, not really knowing what to make of it. Gu yells out for Elderly Master, totally lost about why she'd do this to him after asking for his group. She's in tears, accusing Elderly Master of betraying her. But Elderly Master is over it and cuts Gu off. Acting all confused, like she didn't have a clue what Gu was rambling about, she tells her group to wrap things up. The first sword takes a brutal stab from behind and goes crashing to the ground, shouting at the Ime sect. He realizes that ever since the elderly master became their leader, they've been building up their forces way too fast. He demands to know the name of the woman who just took him out. She tells him she's called Yong. He mentions that he heard one of Ran's disciples had amazing beauty and talent, so it must be her. Yong responds that those are just exaggerated rumors. The first sword takes his last breath, finding it ironic that after years of being an assassin, he couldn't even handle a disciple from the Ime sect. Meanwhile, Yong heads off to tell her sister that the first sword is out of the picture. Meanwhile, the fourth sword is dragged in front of Ran. The captives accuse him of leading the newly recruited assassins to Qingqing Mountain. The elderly master asks him how many assassins he took up the mountain. Instead of answering, he fires back with his own question, asking why she even wants to know. She pushes for an answer, but he just shrugs, saying he has no idea. The fourth sword backs him up, adding that even if they did know, they wouldn't say anything, especially after the mess she made of his palace. The elderly master finds his stubbornness amusing, but she's not playing around. She tortures him until he finally breaks, blurting out that he took 28 assassins. Satisfied, she then asks how many have already been taken out. One of her people reports that 24 are dead. Without hesitation, the elderly master orders them to immediately hunt down the remaining 4. As the palace burns, she turns to Yong, reminding her that her role is important. She says that once things settle down, she'll send someone to the Qingqing sect to arrange a date for the wedding. She also tells Yong to start preparing herself, mind and body, because everything happening now is crucial for the future of their sect. Up on the mountain, Wall watches the monks from a distance. Security at the entrance is tight, so he figures sneaking in from the inside is his best bet. They seem more than ready to go down as sworn enemies of the Jianghu, so he might as well play along. A monk is preparing to collect herbs in his base. His friends warn him to be careful because things have been dangerous lately. The monk feels confident that no one would bother the Qingqing sect. While he walks alone in the woods, Wall suddenly attacks him and puts him in a headlock. The monk tries to ask who Wall is, but Wall pulls out his sword. Wall hurts him, and the monk can't believe someone would attack him on this mountain. Wall then asks if the monk belongs to the Qingqing sect. The monk nods, and Wall lets him go to ask more questions. He asks for the monk's name, and the monk replies that he is Dojin, a third-generation disciple of the Qingqing sect. Wall asks Dojin about Wugun, and Dojin gets scared, thinking Wall is talking about the Lone Star of Qingqing. Wu is curious about why Dojin called him that. Dojin explains that senior brother Wugun is the best member of the Qingqing sect. He has mastered most of their martial arts and possesses advanced skills. Dojin has even heard that past masters from the Qingqing sect are sharing their teachings with him. Wall is thinking about how the Qingqing sect is developing and realizes why they are training hard for this tough opponent. Dojin, feeling desperate, begs Wall to let him live since he has shared all he knows. But when he turns to look at Wall, he becomes scared. Wall is changing, and Dojin starts to worry. When he looks back at Wall, he sees his own face. Confused, Dojin begins to panic as he tries to figure out Wall's intentions. Then, when he meets Wall's dark gaze, he realizes Wall is going to impersonate him. He is upset because he made the mistake of trusting an assassin. Dojin returns to the monk's place and catches the guards off guard. He tells them he's back because he forgot something. As he enters, he feels like he has entered a new world. This is actually Wall, who has changed into Dojin. Wall quietly moves through the base using his turtle breathing technique to find Wugun's room. Wall quickly discovers Wugun's location. Inside the Shangqing Palace, a meeting is happening. The leader of the Qingqing sect asks if things are more peaceful outside now. His second-in-command, Wu Jin, responds that they are close to tracking down the assassins. The sect leader is still surprised that assassins dared to attack their sect. Jin notes that this must be connected to someone else behind the scenes. When the leader asks if Jin has any suspects, Jin replies that they have no leads yet, but he has sent some disciples to gather more information. The sect's top warrior speaks up and says what just happened is unacceptable. He wants to make sure it doesn't happen again. Jin tells him not to worry. The sect leader reminds everyone about the war of heaven and demons and how close they came to losing everything when the Celestial Demon Union almost took over Jianghu. That's when the great martial artist Li Gok stepped in and formed the Providence Alliance. The Shaolin Temple, Wudong sect, and Manhwa sect got involved and worked together to regain their past glory. Meanwhile, the Qingqing sect and Ime sect chose to sit it out and close their doors. They got the fancy title of Great Family of Sichuan, but they can't keep up with the others in practice. The sect leader emphasizes that if they want to catch up, they need to stay focused and work hard. Jin reassures everyone that they shouldn't stress too much. He believes that if things go well, they'll be back on track in just a few years. The top warrior of the sect wants to know how Jin's son, Wu-gun, is doing. He notices that Wu-gun hasn't been seen lately and seems to be focused on training and atonement. Jin feels guilty about not raising his son as he wished. The warrior reassures him that it's normal for a kid his age to be distant and that there's no need to apologize for what has already happened. Jin promises to do better. The warrior believes Wu-gun has real talent. He says if Jin raises him well, Wu-gun can compete with the heirs of the three big sects. The sect leader then mentions that he heard Jin agreed to let Wu-gun marry someone from the Ime sect. Jin confirms this is true. The sect leader thinks this marriage is a good idea and asks if the bride is Ran's disciple. Jin replies that she is actually his youngest disciple. He mentions there are rumors that she is both pretty and smart, which might make her a good match for Wu-gun. However, he still has concerns because of Ran. The elderly master wants to keep up with the Qing-Chung sect, and if Wu-gun marries her, they could be in trouble. This is why Jin has rejected the proposal so far. The best warrior in the sect tries to calm him down. He says they can't continue being enemies with the Ime sect in such a close area. Wu-gun is their only hope for the Qing-Ching sect, and he is getting special treatment. Wall is outside Wu-gun's place for the first time. The layout looks just like the underground cave. The front gate is locked, but Wall knows how to get in. He jumps onto the roof but hears two guys coming, so he lays down quickly. The two monks are arguing. They think Wu-gun is using his isolation training to be with women. One monk wonders if one of their disciples is with Wu-gun, while the other tries to quiet him down. Wall is surprised to learn that Wu-gun is bringing women into the sect. He finds it strange to be around a woman in the sword training hall. As Wall and his friend walk away, he takes a moment to think. He realizes that everywhere you go, there will always be someone different inside. When night comes, Wall prepares for his next move. He runs along the building and sneaks inside, but he can't find Wu-gun, so he decides to crawl through the vents to look for him. In another room, swords are scattered everywhere. Below the vent, he sees Wu-gun lying with a girl. Wall peeks through the vent and recognizes Wu-gun. He realizes Wu-gun is much stronger than the Blood Shadow group captain. However, Wall thinks that if he hits him on the death pressure point, he could take him down. Wall lowers a rope from the vent and tries to wrap it around Wu. Just as he gets it in place, Wu suddenly wakes up. Wall quickly yanks the rope. As Wu is pulled up and in danger of choking, he swiftly slices through the rope with his hand. Wu breaks free and stands in front of Wall. He asks who Wall is. Wall pulls out his blades and charges at Wu, but Wu remains calm. He raises two fingers and easily blocks Wall's attack, surprising him with his strength. Now it's Wu's turn to fight back. Wu attacks without holding back. Using all his strength, Wall struggles to handle the pressure from this powerful fighter who is unarmed. He feels like he might black out from the effort to defend himself. He can't understand how someone can fight like this without weapons. He knows he doesn't have much time to escape this situation, and it will only get worse. He tries to slice again with his blade, but Wu stops it with two fingers. Wu takes a moment to compliment Wall's skills. He asks Wall who sent him, but Wall is out of breath and doesn't answer. Wu laughs and wonders if that girl's dad sent him. Wall just looks confused. Yeah, the story focuses on Wu-gun's life. He has a natural talent for martial arts, but he isn't really interested in it. He starts to skip training, and then one day, a woman notices how skilled he is. He used to be a hero and a great fighter, but everything changed when he met a girl. He went from being a legend to just another guy chasing after Justin's girlfriends, losing his sense of honor. One night, Wu-gun met a woman who was different from the others. However, things went terribly wrong. He got drunk, lost control, and did something he could never take back. He hurt her badly, and soon after she took her own life. As punishment, Wu had to spend a year in isolation. He couldn't do anything fun, just repetitive training. Now Wu faces Wall, who has trained his whole life to defeat him. Wu believes Wall was sent by a girl's father to take revenge for her death, so he prepares to fight. Wall, however, doesn't understand what Wu means. He only feels the intense power coming from Wu, which is scary, like being surrounded by sharp blades. Wu charges at Wall, attacking quickly. Wall uses a lot of energy just to block Wu's strikes. Despite this, Wu continues his relentless assault, and thankfully, Wall's quick reflexes help him stay safe. Wall unexpectedly kicks Wu in the head, which annoys him. Wu counters by knocking Wall down and throwing his blades away. Just when it seems Wu will finish him off, Wall dodges and grabs some blades. Wall launches one at Wu, but Wu blocks it. He shoots more blades, but Wu deflects them too. It feels like nothing Wall tries works, but he keeps going and suddenly fires off a couple more blades. Once again, Wall's attacks get shut down. Then he uses a powerful Ching Chung move, sending out 72 sword waves like a massive wave. Wu stands there, completely stunned as the waves crash down. Wall realizes he is in trouble. As Wu charges at him, Wall quickly disappears and grabs the woman with Wu to use as a shield. Wu gets fed up and uses his technique, whipping up a storm with Wall and the woman. Suddenly, Wall reappears right in front of Wu and tries to strike him with his sword. While being attacked, Wall remembers what the masters taught him about learning martial arts from a book, since you never know when a fight might happen. He tells Yo that only time will show if he is just a sheep or truly a wolf. Then Wall uses the secret technique he learned to target the guy he needs to assassinate. He successfully blocks the guy's moves like a pro. Wu can't believe it. Wall is actually holding his ground against a secret move from the Qingcheng sect. Wu throws punch after punch, but none land, leaving him stunned. What Wu doesn't know is that Wall studied that technique, as if his life depended on it. Wall has his own moves, but this one gives him an advantage. Confident, Wall uses the swift mind technique to dodge Wu's attacks easily. Wall has taken care of business and got back at the Blood Phantom group too. Now there's a ton of panic in the Qingcheng sect. The bells are ringing, and inside Wu Gun's place, Jin is a wreck. He can't wrap his head around how this all went down. Then, the sect's greatest warrior has a light bulb moment. He tells the sect leader they need to get rid of that girl. The sect leader is shocked when someone suggests they get rid of one of their disciples. The person argues that Wu Gun's reputation could be damaged. If word gets out that he was seen with a girl during his isolation training, both of their reputations could suffer. This suggestion deeply troubles the sect leader. The sect's top warrior notices what has happened. He states there's no use in worrying about it. With Wu Gun gone, he knows their sect's reputation is at risk, and they need to act quickly. He suspects someone hired the assassin, likely a person who would benefit from Wu Gun's downfall and the sect's disgrace. The warrior insists they must prevent this from happening, no matter the cost. But as the sect leader tries to come up with a plan, their brothers add that while the sect's reputation is important, it cannot be more valuable than a human life. The sect's top fighter says that if things keep going like this, they will never catch up to the Shaolin or the Wudong. Instead, the gap between them will only grow, and they will end up being a nobody sect. As everyone thinks about this, Jin stands up with his son's sword. He walks over to a disciple and reminds her that, as a member of their sect, she should understand. The disciple starts crying, and Jin tells her she should have helped him. She begs for her life, but Jin thinks it's too late for that. The sect leader runs over to Jin and asks what he has done. Jin explains that he had no choice. Wu was very important to the Qingcheng sect and meant everything to Jin. He couldn't let his reputation be ruined. Jin says he is ready to accept any punishment for his actions. The elderly master at the Imai sect hears news that an assassin killed Wu Gun. She is upset that they didn't catch all the assassins. Her plans to take over the Qingcheng sect are now messed up because her backup plan is not needed anymore. Jianghua says they need to find and stop the assassin because that person might know important secrets. The elderly master mentions that the Qingcheng sect has asked for help. She tells Jianghua to gather everyone because they need to set up a trap right away. Then she looks at Seol and comments that she must be relieved now that the wedding is off. Seol replies that she is not happy at all since she just lost her husband. She is unsure if she is being teased, but the disciple remains calm and walks out. In the countryside, a farmer is walking down the road. He meets two men who are looking for a criminal who has done something terrible. They ask the farmer who he is, and he says his name is Cheo. He lives in a nearby village and was just heading home after working on the farm. The men are curious why Cheo is done for the day so early. Cheo tells them he finished cutting weeds ahead of time. They decide to let him go, but one man feels something is off. He stops Cheo and asks how he looks so clean after farming. He thinks there should be some evidence of the work, especially on Cheo's sickle. Cheo gets nervous, and the men accuse him of being the assassin who killed Wu Gun, as the elderly master said. They signal for backup. The man was right to be suspicious. It's Wall. He tells his men to capture Cheo. Wall finally reveals his true self and gets to work. He quickly takes down all the investigators. After dealing with the chief, he gives him a hard look and uses glowing, stringy ropes to tie him up, choking and pinning him down easily, like he's working with a deadly spiderweb. Wall asks about the elderly master. The chief explains that the elderly master is the abyss of 9 calamities and leads the MA sect. Wall wants to know if she gave him a direct order. The chief says she instructed all MA sect disciples to help the Qingcheng sect catch the assassin, no matter what. Wall questions whether the Ime sect has always been this helpful to the Qingcheng sect. The chief shakes his head, thinking backup should arrive soon, and he just needs to stall Wall. Wall is trying to piece things together. He needs to find someone who knows Wu Gun, isn't as skilled as him, can stick to a plan for 7 years, and has enough money to support it. Wall concludes that it must be the elderly master. The Ime sect's backup finally shows up and charges toward Wall. The guy thinks he's saved and starts gloating, telling Wall it's over for him. He even throws in another threat but doesn't get to finish his sentence as our boys had enough and slices his neck mid-sentence. Then, without missing a beat, he sends his strings flying and wipes out the rest of the attackers like it's no big deal. Back at the Ime sect, word came in that the assassin slipped past the martial artists and got away. This is really stressing Jeonghwa out because it means the assassin is only getting better. It's hard to believe how dangerous an assassin can be against their trained fighters. She's set on chasing him down with everything they've got, but then Seol jumps in and says that's not the best idea. Seol explains that the fact he hasn't been caught yet shows he's got skills better than they think. If they keep chasing him like this, they're just going to see him get away again. Jeonghwa asks Seol for a better plan, and Seol suggests figuring out where he might go next. She thinks he'll head back to a spot that feels safe, probably where he trained as an assassin for a long time. She mentions they found out that the Bloody Phantom group trained their assassins near Batang. Jeonghwa is really annoyed by how clever Seol is, but he admits they've got plenty of supplies coming in. He says they're heading to Batang to see if they can beat him there. They quickly find Wall and chase him closely. They know he is hurt and won't last much longer. He tries to escape by running up a wall, not realizing they are predicting his moves. When he looks back, he sees Seol, the one who planned all this, and he understands he is in serious trouble now. Wall is making a run for it, trying to shake off his pursuers as he dives into a dense forest. After a bit, everything goes quiet, and he starts to think maybe they've given up on him. But when he glances back, he sees a huge blast coming straight at him, followed by a massive explosion. As the dust settles, the Qingcheng warrior steps forward. He knows his attack was reckless and brutal, but his rage drowns out any second thoughts. Still, he needs to capture Wall alive, and figuring out who ordered the hit is the real priority. He tells his crew to check if Wall is still alive, and up above, Jeonghwa spots him and rushes in to attack. This lady's got some serious strength as she throws a lightning blade at our guy, causing another explosion. Everyone is on edge, waiting to see what happens next. The Qingcheng warrior notices that Jeonghwa's not holding back and is aiming to take him out. She gives the order to find the assassin, making sure he has nowhere to escape. While exploring, they stumble upon an entrance that leads underground and guess that's where Wall went. The Qingcheng warrior tells his crew to climb down the rope, reminding them that they need to catch the assassin alive. Meanwhile, Jeonghwa, hiding in the shadows, instructs her followers to follow suit, but makes it clear the assassin isn't walking out of here alive. Both groups make their way down and are totally shocked to discover this is where the Bloody Phantom group trains their assassins. Then, the Qingcheng warrior has a huge realization when they find a perfect replica of the Qingcheng sect. Jeonghwa notices the building and starts to feel really anxious. One of the Qingcheng disciples spots it too and gets fired up, telling his master they can't just turn a blind eye to this. The warrior figures out that Wu Gun's assassination has been in the works for a while, and there's no way a spot like this could stay under wraps without some backup. He suspects someone has been protecting them all along. Jeonghwa just stands there, completely speechless. The warrior laughs and tells his disciples that catching the assassin is their main job now. He makes it clear they need to catch him alive. The disciples nod, understanding his point, and set off on their mission. Jeonghwa steps up and says she will gather her own group to do the same. The warrior reminds her that she also needs to capture him alive. He adds that she can do whatever she wants with him afterward, but he must be taken in alive. Jeonghwa nods, feeling a bit nervous, and agrees to his request. As she walks away, he mentions that if the assassin ends up dead, he's going to be really upset. It seems like someone's been looking down on their sect. He's planning to track them down, even if it means going after one of the 5 great sects. Jeonghwa feels a bit uneasy. She can tell he's suspicious of the Ime sect, since they're not even looking at each other. As Seol enters the cave, she feels a strong sense of danger. This is the assassin's hideout, and while everyone wants to catch the target, she knows they are not prepared for this place. Meanwhile, the Qingcheng warrior discovers the base of the real ones. He looks around, amazed by its size. As he explores, he starts to wonder if the assassins built it themselves. He can't tell who might have helped them create such a large place. Eventually, he arrives at the last room. In the room, the warrior begins searching for clues. He feels along the wall and finds a hidden pressure plate. This opens a secret spot in the wall, revealing a golden tube inside. He takes it out and reads the message, which is a request to eliminate Wu Gun. The man is very angry because someone ruined the future of the Qingcheng sect for just 500,000 yang. Driven by revenge, he wants to destroy the Blood Phantom group. He discovers a bigger hole in the wall nearby and steps inside. Inside, he sees a table with a book on it. The room is filled with thousands of snakes, but he ignores the danger and goes to the table to pick up the book. It turns out to be a manual from the famous 9 Demon School. He remembers that the 9 Demon School was a clan that vanished a long time ago during the War of Heaven and Demons. As he thinks about this, the search for Wall continues. Meanwhile, the disciples of the Qingcheng sect find some grains of rice on the ground and sense that Wall is nearby. They remind each other to stay alert because the assassin could attack at any moment. As they move on together, one disciple falls behind. He realizes he should have stayed closer to the group because suddenly, Wall drops down and chokes him to death. The other disciples miss it because they are still shocked that the assassin lived underground. One of them thinks the assassin must have used a sneak move in his fight with Wu-gun. He struggles to accept that Wu could have actually lost a fair fight, and Wall doesn't agree with that, so he takes care of it in his own way. The others see their friend fall and quickly realize that Wall is nearby. One guy panics and starts running around, hoping to find Wall. The rest of the group also panics and splits up, giving Wall the chance to take them out one by one. One guy stays behind, trying to act brave even though he is scared. He yells for Wall to show himself. Wall decides to play with him and puts out all the torches. The guy is so frightened that he ends up wetting himself just before Wall steps out of the shadows and takes him down for good. The other group is having a tough time since their footprints are marking the ground, making it hard for them to find the assassin. Ming, a disciple from the Qingcheng sect, thinks that if Wall's goal was to escape, he could have easily hidden. But instead, Wall has led his enemies right into a place he knows well. Ming thinks Wall is trying to take control in the area he knows best. He wants to catch the assassin to improve his reputation in the sect. Ming starts giving orders to the other disciples, telling them to pair up and stay alert. As he takes a step, he triggers a pressure plate. He shouts for everyone to watch out as arrows fly toward them. The disciples try to block the arrows with their swords, but there are too many, and several get hurt. Ming barely dodges the arrows himself, shocked by the trap. He feels upset to see some of the disciples injured. He looks up and sees more traps overhead. He yells another warning, amazed that anyone could live in a place like this. Meanwhile, someone is hidden above, watching the chaos below while the others search for him. The story continues with the Qingcheng warrior staring at the thousands of snakes in the pit. He thinks these snakes were probably collected by the Nine Demon School for research. He wonders if this cave used to be their headquarters. The Ime sect disciples are in chaos after their defeat. Some are missing, and those who remain are scared that Wall might attack again. Yonghua tries to calm everyone down. She tells them to stop panicking and reminds them that the assassin is injured and won't act recklessly. It's important for them to stay together instead of running off. Meanwhile, Wall feels the pressure from his injuries and decides to act quickly, taking Yonghua out in an instant. But she senses the tension and realizes that something is wrong. As Wall gets closer, she quickly spins around to defend herself. It's a face-off with Wall. Yonghua grabs Wall's hand and tries to strike with the other one. He goes for Yonghua's eye, jabbing with 2 fingers, and she yelps in pain. But that's all he manages to do. Wall is surprised by Seol, who has her sword pressed against his side. He realizes she has strong skills because her attack is on point. Seol isn't used to getting compliments, though. She tells Wall to give up, but he laughs and has a different plan. He charges at Seol, but she dodges easily. Wall gets up and pulls the sword out of his side. He looks back at Seol and asks if she'll let him go if he gives up. Seol hesitates for a moment, but Wall knows she won't. He points out that if she was willing to show mercy, she wouldn't have attacked the rest of the Blood Phantom crew. Seol asks Wall how much he knows, and he casually replies that he's aware she, the Abyss of 9 Calamities, is connected to everything. Yonghua, not wanting any secrets to get out, immediately tells Seol to kill him. After a moment of hesitation, Seol admits she's not exactly a fan of her master either. With that, she unleashes a powerful surge of energy at Wall. Wall knows that going up against Seol directly would be a terrible idea. But just as he's about to back off, he gets hit by a burst of energy. Yonghua realizes this situation is really bad for the MA sect, so she decides to take matters into her own hands. But the greatest warrior steps in and tells her to move aside. Yonghua insists on trying to save the MA sect one last time, arguing that they need to take out the assassin before he can unleash any magic. The greatest warrior isn't really sweating it. He squats down to chat with Wall and asks him why he went through with it. He figures that even an assassin should know right from wrong. Wall opens up to the greatest warrior, explaining that he was taken to the cave when he was just 14. He didn't get the chance to tell right from wrong back then. Wall mentions that being trained as an assassin meant he didn't really have a choice in the matter. The greatest warrior notices that Wall isn't showing any empathy at all. Wall's eyes are full of anger, and the greatest warrior thinks he could have been a great ally if he'd had a better upbringing. So, the greatest warrior pulls out a tube and freezes Wall. He discovered the request to take out Wu-gun. With that, the greatest warrior asks who asked for the hit. Wall says he has a hunch. Then he asks the greatest warrior if he stopped them from going after him because he was thinking of the same person too. The greatest warrior glances back, and Yonghua looks like she's about to be sick. A group of Qingcheng sect disciples rush over, asking if their master needs assistance. The greatest warrior turns to Ming and asks what happened to the others. Ming explains they didn't make it as they got caught in the assassin's trap. Frustrated but determined, the warrior knows what he has to do. Rising to his feet, he looks at Wall and says a quick death would be far too kind for you. He grabs Wall by the foot and starts dragging him, determined to make him suffer a pain worse than hell. It's the only way he can offer even a shred of atonement to those Wall has killed. Meanwhile, Wall silently wonders who's going to make up for the 7 years he's lost. The warrior brought Wall right to the bottom of the real ones. Holding on to Wall's foot, he looks down at the pit full of snakes. The warrior gives Wall one last shot and asks if he's still not planning to make things right. All Wall can do is laugh at that. The warrior knows exactly what he has to do. He looks at Wall and tells him he has no place in this world. Without hesitation, he throws Wall into a pit of snakes, wanting him to suffer a painful death while paying for his sins. Turning to the others, the warrior says it's time to leave the cave. He orders the entrance sealed so no one can ever use this place again. Wall is left alone to die in the snake pit, and the snakes waste no time sinking their fangs into him. But as the starved snakes take turns attacking, Wall doesn't even flinch. Instead, he starts hissing back at them. Grabbing one of the snakes, he shows them who's boss and bites its head clean off. Time goes by, and Wall ends up spending years all by himself in the cave. He managed to escape the snake pit and picked up martial arts moves from the Ching Chung and Ame sects by reading the books left behind on the dead bodies. After so much time hanging out with the snakes underground, Wall started taking on some of their traits. Wall has totally changed as he's got lighter skin and hair now. His body went through a lot after switching to a snake-only diet. Right now, he's just waiting for the chance to get back at those above ground. In Batong, there's this guy who just got tossed out from the top floor of a brothel. Wall is the one who did it, finally out of the cave. He's telling the boss he needs 3 days to himself and she's not taking it well. She's confused about who this guy is and where he even came from. What? One of her guards tries to intimidate Wall for tossing a martial artist from the Sapphire House in Batong out of the window. But Wall couldn't care less and takes on both guards with his soul-reaping thread. The woman looks totally shaken since Wall just took them down with a simple flick of his wrist. She couldn't remember ever seeing anyone like him in Sichuan. Now, she definitely saw Wall as way more than just an ordinary guy. The boss quickly asked for Wall's forgiveness, saying he could hang around as long as he wanted. She promised to get him anything he needed and begged him to let her guards go. Wall paused for a moment, but all the boss could think about was how calm his eyes were. To her, it felt like she was staring down a massive snake from the rainforest. Wall said he just needed 3 days. He freed the guards and asked if everyone could please leave him alone. The boss agreed to his terms and asked what his name was. He replied, "I'm P.O. Wall." After 3 days, Wall is finally set to bounce from the brothel. When he first stumbled out of the cave, he was totally bare, but the boss was chill enough to hook him up with some clothes. They even packed him a lunchbox for when he starts feeling hungry. As Wall walks out, the boss is still trying to wrap her head around who she just met. Her employee explains that Wall is just a guest who happened to drop by their brothel. The boss can't help but think that a new star of death has popped up in the Jianghu. Wall takes a break on his journey to grab a bite and escape the rain. He finds himself enjoying nature, something he's really missed for so long. It hits him that 7 whole years have gone by. He knows he can't forget his past, but he realizes that if he keeps holding on to it, he won't be able to move forward. To truly break free, he feels like the Ching Cheng sect and the Ime sect need to pay for ruining his life. Wall figures if he heads to Chengdu, he might uncover more about those sects. Wall is chilling on his break when a group of people walks up, looking for a spot to escape the rain. Once they're under the roof, they start arguing about how soaked they are. After tossing blame around, they notice Wall just sitting there, watching them. They're a bit shocked to see someone else up in the mountains. The woman quickly tells Wall he's really handsome. The guy with her shoots back that she should be thanking him for getting them lost, which annoys her, so she tells him to shut it. Ranju turns to Wall and says it must be fate that they're all stuck under the same roof. She introduces herself as Ranju, and he replies with his name, Wall. She's totally smitten and kind of annoys him because she goes wild whenever a good-looking guy is around. Then, a guy jumps in and introduces himself as Daoshi, while a monk chimes in with his name, Hyul. Ranju asks Wall where he's headed, and he says he's off to Chengdu. Coincidentally, that's where Ranju and the crew are headed too. She thinks it'd be awesome to travel together, but Wall seems a bit hesitant. They're a weird mix of people at first glance, but they all know how to work together when it counts. He's curious if Ranju is the main one holding it all together, even though she doesn't seem like the boss. Wall is up for it and decides to go with the flow. He feels like there's a strong bond or something deeper that connects them all, and he wants to dig into that more. They're all set to start their trip and manage to find a crew to hop on with. Daoshi mentions they'll be leaving in about an hour. Ranju starts griping about how uncomfortable rice cargo ships are. She loves getting under Daoshi's skin. Then she turns to Wall, asking why he's off to Chengdu. Wall says he's got to meet up with someone. Ranju's curious and presses him for more info. So he explains he's meeting up with folks who owe him a favor. She asks if he's in debt, and he quickly clarifies that it's the other way around because he's the one owed. Wall asks Ranju why she's going to Chengdu, and she replies that it's for business. Wall points out he doesn't see any goods with her. Ranju chuckles and says, sometimes you can sell what you can't see. Then Daoshi jumps in and asks Wall which clan he's from. Wall tells him he's not in a clan, which surprises them. He asks if that's an issue, and Daoshi says it isn't, but he's definitely left curious about who Wall really is. Everything feels chill and peaceful out on the water. People are chatting and enjoying each other's company. Wall is soaking it all in after being alone for so long, but his moment of calm is cut short when Ranju starts pestering him. She wants to know what's got him so lost in thought, saying he has this sentimental look on his face. Wall tells her to back off if she's just going to keep talking nonsense. Ranju laughs and teases that he's playing with her heart like a fiddle. Daoshi and Huel are just watching, and Huel asks if they should step in. Daoshi tells him not to worry, saying the powerful blood spider isn't going to fall for some guy's charms. He notes that everything she does is planned out, and even though she's acting all cute, she's still got a pretty nasty attitude, like a spider ready to pounce. Daoshi thinks Wall is pretty shady. Then suddenly, the current gets super strong and messes up their trip. They glance out and spot an approaching boat. It's a gang of pirates looking to snag their rice. One of the sailors shouts for everyone to grab a weapon. They're definitely in a tough situation. But then Daoshi steps in and asks the sailor if he needs help. The sailor questions who Daoshi is, and Daoshi just replies that it doesn't really matter who he is. What counts is what he can actually do. Yeah. The monk jumps off the boat and lands right on the pirate's ship. The pirates are a bit surprised at first, but then they rush to attack. Huel takes them all on by himself, which leaves the sailors and his buddies stunned. This isn't anything Daoshi hasn't seen before, though. He tells the sailor it'll cost 500 yangs to settle this. Huel doesn't waste any time after he makes his first move. He unleashes a flurry of kicks, taking down the pirates as if they were nothing, and he finishes the job on the last one who's still twitching with a quick hit. Once everything's wrapped up, he jumps back onto his ship like it's just another regular day. Daoshi gave a shout-out to Huel for his work, and Huel suggested getting Ranju to handle it next time. Daoshi just laughed it off, saying he'd be glad if she didn't go all crazy on him for asking. They both looked around for her, and she was still trying to catch Wol's eye. Ranju begged Wol to stick around at Chengdu, but he insisted that he felt better on his own. The girl totally digs his laid-back vibe. As Daoshi and Huel get their pay, they can't believe Ranju is still at it. Daoshi figures that Wol isn't your typical person. Anyone else would freak out in this kind of situation. He thinks only someone who's been through a lot of chaos could have that kind of look in their eyes. Ranju gives it one last shot and hits Wol with her puppy eyes. Wol is totally confused, and Ranju can't believe he's actually saying no. He tells her he's just not into poisonous roses no matter how pretty they look. Her tears dry up fast because she's stoked that Wol thinks she's beautiful. That alone makes her happy. Meanwhile, Wol sees these folks as wanderers who sell their muscle for cash. They just flexed enough to get some rumors buzzing around about their skills in Chengdu. He's starting to wonder if that means there's some big conflict going down that needs these wanderers to step in. He doesn't think the Ime sect and the Qingchang sect would let any kind of fight happen in Chengdu. But then he wonders, what if things aren't going so well for them? He recalls his last moments with the Qingchang sect and the Ime sect. Wal wants to make them pay for their mistakes just like he had to. They finally dock the boat and are ready to head to Chengdu. Daoshi says they need to get there by morning and asks Wal what his plan is. Wal replies that he's planning to stay here for the night. Ranju looks upset and asks if he's really sure he can't go with them. Wal tells her he has something he needs to sort out on his own. He tries to give her a little hope and says he'll reach out when he gets to Chengdu. Ranju makes him promise, and he does. Wal heads out and makes his way into town where he ducks into a lodge. As soon as he walks in, he catches some people staring. An employee asks if he's looking for food or a place to stay, and Wal says he wants both, but he'd like to eat first. They bring his meal over, but a group of guys starts chatting about his clothes from the other side of the room. Just when Wal is about to dig in, a guy interrupts him. This guy, Yang, introduces himself as the main escort for the Nine Treasures Escort Corps. He asks Wal why he's dressed in women's clothes if he's a dude. Zhang claims he made a bet with his friends to figure it out. Wal casually replies that Zhang just lost his cash. Zhang, not backing down, says he still can't tell if Wol's being honest. Then his buddies challenge him to strip Wal so they can know for sure. As Zhang gets tempted by the pressure, Wal flicks a chopstick right into Zhang's eye. Zhang's crew starts freaking out when they see him tearing up. Turns out, he just got stabbed in the eye over a joke gone wrong and thanks to peer pressure. Wal does not hold back and thinks that since he cannot see now anyway, it is best to take out the other eye as well. Zhang's begging for mercy, but Wall's already driving another chopstick in. Zhang's screams say it all. Zhang's friends finally come to help him out, but Wall grabs a bunch of chopsticks. He launches them and takes out the bullies in no time, basically blinding them. He tells them they need to own up to what they've done. Later on, in the village of Chengdu, Ranju and the crew are hanging out. They notice that a bunch of people in the streets are packing weapons. Ranju thinks it's the perfect chance for them. Hyul chimes in, saying it's one person's bad luck and another's good luck, calling it a real tragedy. Ranju, annoyed, tells him to chill. When Hyul asks why, Ranju calls out who's the most obsessed with money among them, and Ranju is excited to see her captain, Moryang. He gives her a nod as his vice captain and mentions that she made it right on time. Hyul and Daoshi also say hello, pointing out how long it's been since they last caught up, and he responds with a warm greeting back. The four of them are chilling around a table, and Daoshi brings up that he needs some cash, especially after taking a long break. Moryang points out that the whole gathering was meant to tackle that. Daoshi, feeling unsure, asks if they're really planning to get involved in this. Moryang raises an eyebrow, wondering if it's too much for him, saying he can bail if he wants. Daoshi laughs it off and assures everyone he never meant to suggest he wanted to dip out. Ranju brings up the Qing Chang sect and the Ime sect, wondering if there's some connection between them. Daoshi jumps in, pointing out that everyone knows about the ongoing feud between the two sects that's been going on for 7 years now. Moryang chimes in to say that no one really knows why it all started, but things have definitely escalated over time. The clashes range from martial artists getting into fights to huge battles, which have split everyone up across Jianghu and Sichuan. Moryang thinks a big showdown between the sects is just around the corner, but Ranju is curious about why they're even fighting in the first place. Moryang brushes it off, saying the reason doesn't matter. What's important to him is that this chaos might finally give him a shot at making his dream a reality. Later, we see Wall heading out of the lodge. The owner remembers Wall's earlier actions and starts to feel nervous, hoping Wall will just leave without any trouble. Wall walks up to the owner and asks who knows the most about what's going on in Sichuan. The owner is a bit confused and asks what Wall means by internal affairs. Wall clarifies that he's looking to find out what's happening between the sects. The owner suggests that Wall check out the workshop, especially the Fire Dragon Room. It's a place where Sichuan's artisans came together ages ago. They've been working with all the local sects for a while, so if Wall buys a weapon from them, they'll happily answer any questions he has. So Wall heads over to the workshop. A guy starts shouting at his worker for using a hammer without asking, reminding him that he wasn't supposed to do that. He gives the worker a kick in the back of the head and tells him to stick to his regular chores. The guy yells at the worker to explain why he's just standing there and tells him to head to the back to finish up his tasks. He makes it clear that the worker isn't allowed to come back until he's called. Then he spots Wall watching the whole thing happen. Sue. The guy shifts his attention to Wall and asks what he's looking to buy. But Wall is more curious about what the worker did wrong. The guy admits the worker's behavior isn't great, mentioning there's a rumor that the worker is from the Tang clan, but he still tried to use the hammer without asking first. Wall asks if Tang clan descendants can't use hammers. The guy replies by asking if it's Wall's first time in Sichuan, and Wall says it basically is. Then the guy starts explaining how the Tang clan went downhill ages ago because they teamed up with the demon cult. Because of that, they got shut down by someone known as the strongest in history, which led to the clan's quick drop and fall. The Sichuan folks see the Tang clan as traitors to their community, so no workshop is willing to share their techniques with them. They're worried that history might just repeat itself. One guy says the Tang clan has to deal with the mistakes of their ancestors, asking why they chose to team up with the demon cult and claiming their fate is basically their own fault. The guy asks Wall again what he's looking to buy. Wall replies that he's on the hunt for a flying sword. The man tells him to follow him, saying that all the workshop's weapons are in the back. As they stroll to the back, Wall asks the guy if he's been getting a lot of orders lately. The man chuckles and says that their orders have shot up since the Ime sect and the Qing Chang sect started throwing punches at each other. He explains that even though things are getting wild in Sichuan, their business is actually booming. He goes on to say that all the craftsmen in their shop are swamped with making weapons for different sects. While the guy keeps talking, Wall spots a descendant of the Tang clan getting beaten up nearby. The guys who are beating up Sochu think that the Tang clan fell apart because they didn't stick to the rules. They feel like they're showing Sochu where he belongs. While he's getting hit, he spots a dagger lying nearby on the ground. Wall walks up to the group and comments that people can be worse than animals when they let themselves be treated badly. He says that putting up with abuse makes you live like a worthless dog. Then, Wall turns to Sochu and asks him how he plans to live his life.